teachers of Reddit. What's the most interesting thing a child has brought in for show and tell? Not a teacher, but in junior high we had to do a presentation on a family member. A girl in my class did hers on her grandfather Richard the 500th Winters. She literally filled an entire poster board with just the medals and badges Winter received during his time in the service. At the time I hadn't heard of Band Brothers, but my teacher was huge fan and was freaking out during the whole presentation. Not the teacher, but in 2nd grade I forgot to bring an item for show and tell. I had a somewhat loose tooth, so I excused myself to the bathroom, casually ripped out the tooth with my fingers, walked back and showed it off to the class. My mother was called. Not a teacher, but we had a kid bring a military grade smoke bomb of some sort into my high school once for some class project. He thought it was a dud. All I remember is a whole S***T-ton of red smoke, and then everyone going home early. I teach online school to 2nd graders. One day during live chat, a little girl brought her dog swaddled in blankets. When it came her time to share, she held the dog up to the camera and said, "This is Sparkles. She is 2 months old and died right before chat started." My student brought her dead dog to chat. There were 11 other kids in the chat room that all saw this. A dryer sheet, he even passed it around for the class to smell it. One of my professors told me that when he was in 1st grade a kid in his class got his toe cut off in a lawnmower accident. The kid brought in his toe in a jar for show and tell. I can tell an interesting story. My youngest sister is adopted from China. We have a cousin, white like the rest of us. That's a model, and at this point, was in a lot of magazines like Cosmo, Vogue, etc. My sister brought in magazines to show off for show and tell. All the S***TTY little 3rd grade girls made fun of her, saying that the girl in the magazines wasn't her cousin because of the white/Chinese thing. The next time it was my sister's turn, she brought in our cousin in the flesh with a bigger stack of magazines. Checkmate. B*****CHES. When I was younger my sister got my grandparents to bring a miniature horse to the school for show and tell. Mind you, they had to drive 3-5 hours to do it, and the horse rode in the back seat all the way there and all the way home. I think she won the award for coolest show and tell that day. A kid in a couple years lower than me had a dad that was a banker. He brought in some cool play money and even handed some out to kids, including me. When I showed my play money note to my parents, they were shocked to find it was actually 2 $100 bills. Him from the UK. A letter from the school went out to all the parents asking them to bring it back to school. Imagine that kid was in a ***T load of trouble. A bit difficult, but B had a pet day at school and most people just brought their cats and dogs. At lunch we did a big show where people with pets walked around in a large circle. I remember hysterically laughing cause this one girl brought her pet fish and was trying to walk with it. We were probably about 6 or 7 at the time, so she was really struggling with the thing and trying to walk without sloshing the water. Props to her though, she loved her fish. As a kindergartner I once brought a homing pigeon to show and tell. The class tied a note to its leg and we released the bird. The next day for show and tell I brought the note. A child's trekking stick made out of a human femur. Legit. Despite the legality of using human remains being in question, and some serious side-eye from me all year during conferences, the story of how he acquired it was quite interesting. Apparently, it was a family heirloom and the kid's great-great-grandson dug it up from his backyard in rural Virginia back in the early 1800s and named it, no joke, Lemuel. My son was assigned to bring his favorite book one day. Well, he was absolutely fascinated with the phone book that recently came. Took it to school. Later learned every teacher heard about internet generation kid who loves the phone book. Not a teacher, but my cousin brought me in for her show and tell item once. She was 5 and I was 1, so I don't remember it, but apparently her classmates really liked me. Not a teacher, but I remember a student brought in a sword, which he claimed his grandfather took off of a Japanese airplane that he shot down during the war. I don't think his parents knew he took it. When I was in kindergarten we did show and tell by the letters of the alphabet, IDK how others did it. So when we get to W I brought my dad. His name is Wes. I grew up around horses, so when we were on my dad brought a horse for us to pet. The town I lived in was really small, so it wasn't the weirdest thing. I'm not a teacher, but when I was in elementary school I brought in my pet squirrel. My dad had a schedule in which he was off work that day, so he brought her to the school for me in her harness and leash. I had a kid in grade 1 bring in his sock. He said it was smelly and used it for training to cope with bad smells. 17 5-year-olds rolled on the floor in hysterics. Best show and tell ever. In elementary school, 1991ish, I brought in a jar of mercury my grandfather got from working in a steel mill. The school didn't like that. My parents got it back. My old secondary school tutor told us that when she did her training they had a show and tell day and a kid brought in a shark tooth necklace and said they were from real sharks his uncle had killed while away. He passed the necklace around, and while talking one of the other kids went, "If these are from a real shark, why do they say made in China on the back?" The other kid, without missing a beat, went, "They were Chinese sharks, duh." I wasn't the teacher in this case, but a guy brought in a slave collar from before the Civil War. This was a history class, and we were discussing the early 1800s. We had all learned about slavery, of course, but seeing a thick iron collar and chain that were meant to be placed around the neck of a human being so they could be sold as property. To this day, it's the only thing I've ever seen that just felt evil. Someone brought air in a bag from his room. He opened it and tried to get everyone to smell it. He told everyone afterwards it was just a fart and everyone just lost it. Had a student who wanted to bring in a dummy hand grenade. He was somewhere on the spectrum and was super into military history and he could not understand why he couldn't bring it into school. It had no explosives, but was 100% accurate in every other way. To be fair, I had trouble understanding why he couldn't bring it in. I was in grade 12 BO when we had a 2-bodied pig born in the barn. 1 nose, 2 eyes, 4 ears and everything further back doubled. I brought it into class and caused quite the stir. According to my 8-year younger brother, the teacher still talks about how awesome it was to see. One of my kindergarten students brought in a legit set of Russian Matryoshka dolls. Every time she opened one and there was another inside, everyone in the room lost their S***T. Every time. Goddamn most hilarious show. Until I can remember, lol. Edit. Someone pointed out the correct word, which is not babushka. My wife had someone bring a potato. They were poor and thought it was cool. I'm not a school teacher, but a leader for a program in a church. Stuffed animal night. Some little boy brought in a devil plush toy that said "I love you" in a creepy voice. I worked with the 3 to 5-year-olds. Out of the 16 there that night, 15 left crying and 1 left laughing. When I was in elementary school, my great-grandmother brought in her husband's military medals from his time in service during WW2. She sat with the class and explained all about his service and what each medal/ribbon represented. Close to 30 years later, and I still remember her sitting up front talking to us. This one guy I know brought in a limited edition Ultra Lord action figure. Their mother's science set, which apparently is what a child at only 7 years of life will call a pipe and other drug paraphernalia. It took social services all but 2 hours to have the child removed. Now, a few months down the line, I'm learning they have already been housed with a few foster families, but it never works out. A truly lovely but troubled child. Not a teacher, but my favorite memory of show and tell. When I was in kindergarten, the first time we had show and tell, I bought in my favorite stuffed animal. Think on of the late 80s cartoons. It was one of those. Sitting in the classroom circle, I remember looking across and seeing the exact same toy being held by another little girl. We were so excited about it. She became my best friend and still is today, all because of a crazy stuffed animal. I was the student. In grade 1 or 2, I brought a skinned rabbit face in for show and tell. My aunt from Newfoundland sent it to me in the mail, cause I guess they eat rabbits. I think this was close to Easter, which was most likely the reason she sent it then. Didn't realize how creepy that would have been for my teacher. Obligatory not a teacher. I brought in my great uncle when I was in kindergarten. He fought in WWII and was an anti-aircraft gunner. He had a shell explode near him and had huge shrapnel scars on his legs that he showed off. I explained about bombs and debris, and he told stories about his time with the Canadian Army and lying about his age to go fight. My teacher thought it was pretty morose and that we were a bit young to discuss war, but I think he did a good job of explaining things on a level 5-year-olds could understand. Not a teacher, but my little brother once made a rocket out of tampons glued to a stick and took it to school. The teacher called my mom and told her all about the rocket. He was in first grade, so the rocket was not a school threat, but it was just funny. Also, he once took a bag of grass to school, and the school called and asked what his intentions were. He told the teacher that he likes dealing with the weeds with dad. In all reality, he liked helping dad garden and liked mowing the yard with his toy mower next to dad. Edit. Forgot to mention that he colored the tampon rocket with markers to look like one of those rocket popsicles. Not a teacher, but in 3rd grade I had a bunch of baby chicks hatched. I think I originally brought in a toy, but then my grandpa came by to drop off my lunch I had forgotten, right when it was my turn to show and tell. My grandpa had brought in a runt baby chick he was keeping warm in his coat pocket, and instead of the toy I decided the little chick would be my show and tell for the week. My teacher loved it. The kids loved it. My grandpa loved it. It was great. Not a teacher, but a kid at a school local to me bought in a deactivated stun grenade. Teachers brought the army in. Kids were evacuated. My son feels his rock collection is no longer interesting enough. In 1st grade the bad kid in my class brought in his pet snake. I brought in pictures of my family vacation to the World Trade Center for a kindergarten show and tell that was on the 9th of October 2001. Every once in a while, there is a news article about some kid bringing in their parents' drugs for show and tell. Damn, I wish adults could have show and tell at work. Not a teacher, but in high school one of my friends brought his newborn sister's placenta. Our biology teacher got all up in it and was handling it and seemed super stoked that my friend brought it to show. She gave him some gnarly extra credit if I recall. Obligatory, not a teacher, but in kindergarten, we had a project that we each had a predetermined day where we had to bring in our most special / favorite things. One kid brought in his northeasts, a couple brought in toys or dolls. On my day I brought in my dad. We were super poor at the time, and I know he didn't get paid for taking the day off, so I know my parents had to sacrifice to make it happen. I will remember getting to spend the whole school day with my best friend forever. Obligatory edit for gold. Thank you, kind stranger. If it makes you guys feel any better, my dad is my best friend. He's like the 60-year-old male version of me. Make sure to like and subscribe for more daily content. Thanks for watching.